he does send her tulips, which the love language is I'm hopelessly in love with you.
Yeah, golden tulips.
He does a floriography on her.
I love the Victorian language of flowers.
Yeah, you're talking Melody's love language right now.
Yes, I was so horny for these tulips and this gesture and all of the floriography. I was just like, this is how we need to communicate everything.
Taylor, you somehow picked a single book that hit a lot of horny points that are fairly niche.
Very niche.
For both me and Melody.
I love that for all of us.
I'm Melody Carlisle.
And I'm Sabrina Bradley.
And this is Heaving Bosoms. This is the podcast where best friends recap romance novels and other kissing media that makes us swoon, snark, and refills our cups.
Whether you've read the book or are coming in blind, we'll lay bare every delicious scene and revel in the tropes and subgenres that make romance amazing.
All right, listener, strap in and strap on. Headphones are highly recommended.
By the way, hi, new friend. I'm Sabrina.
Hi. So nice to meet you, Sabrina.
I do remember vividly your episode that you've already done with Mel because I love The Lake House. I love that movie.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, listener, hey, we have a friend who's back. It's Taylor.
I'm back. I'm very excited about this. This is like one of my favorite books.
Yeah, listener. Last year, I asked for books from St. Vincent lovers that had like St. Vincent vibes, you know. And Taylor is one of the biggest St. Vincent stans I know.
It's true.
Yeah, she like carries the banner for us. And this was her recommendation last year. So it was like, I felt like it was perfect. I was like, we should have her back because she loves St. Vincent so much.
I do. I mean, it's hard not to, but
agreed.
You know, I try and forgive people who love someone else more, but you know.
Oh, there's one of those in that room. I love St. Vincent, but I'm a West Ravenel diehard fangirl.
Oh my God. Okay. You might have picked the only person who could compete because I think Devil's Daughter is maybe like even if I love St. Vincent more, I think Devil's Daughter is probably one of my favorite Clayton books ever. So I can forgive that.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you for the grace. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, I'm so much more comfortable in the sandbox now. You know what I mean? I'm really glad we aired that out.
Yeah. We got to get it out there because like I do love St. Vincent, but like
yes.
Yeah, I know. Well, okay.
Great.
So we're reading Luckiest Lady in London. The Luckiest Lady in London. That phrase is said 3 times in this book. Which I love.
Appreciated.
Frankly.
Every time a book does the thing, I'm like, thank you.
Yeah,
I
you
appreciate
did it.
this.
Okay, so when we start off in the prologue, we meet baby Felix.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Baby Felix is a sad boy.
We have a Sebastian on our hands, listener.
Oh, Taylor, I don't know if this has come out on the regular podcast yet, but we have decided in the Discord and elsewhere that all sad boys are now
sad boys
called Sebastians.
And if they're only a little sad, they're a little Sebastian. A la Parks and Rec.
I think that's perfect because just broken, sad boy with daddy issues. I mean, and he's got mommy issues.
Oh, yeah.
He is not ever going to make the mistake of loving anyone. Like, that
because he knows how much love ruins your life.
Right.
He knows that that's the ultimate power one can have over you.
And he prefers power to being powerless.
I am just such trash for it. And this book in particular is like, that was one of the first I started like, oh man. I mean, it's one of those God tier prologues. I would put it up there with Lord of Scoundrels. It's just
I
all
agree
the
with that.
issues. Like, love makes you powerless. Like, very bourgeois, as St. Vincent would say. But man, I don't know how much you want to get into the prologue. The last line of it is incredible, but.
Well, I do have a highlight from it where he realized at last, as he watched the late Marquess's casket being lowered to the ground, that though father and son had looked nothing alike on the surface, underneath they had yearned for love with the same intensity, the same stubborn hope that even years of antipathy could not completely erase. And I was like, that is the perfect fucking setup for this. Bring me the sad boy 15, 18, 20 years later. I'm so ready to see how hard this has fucked you over and how much you avoid love and fall into it face first.
Oh my God. So here's the thing. This is wild to me because this is the first time I've ever seen child is used as the instrument of revenge.
Right.
That's a whole different level.
Really?
That I can't remember anything.
Yeah.
This definitely isn't the first time I've seen it. Like, I could not come up with a book name off the top of my head, but I've definitely seen this before in a historical.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other thing that struck me about this, so listener, basically he's born to a beautiful mother and then like a very British dad, British.
He is an
British gentry. Yeah, real aristocrat. He's got the weak chin, all the stereotypical things. And she didn't want to marry him because she was in love with somebody else. But he went to her dad. He went to her manager, basically, over her head to be like, I want to marry her. And because he offered to pay so much money for the privilege of marrying her like gambling indebted dad told her she had to do it. And when she said no, he locked her in her room for 4 months with only bread and water until she relented and said that she would marry this guy.
I wouldn't want to marry somebody after that. I don't care how much money I spent on them.
Right? At some point I would be like, offer rescinded, Like, I feel like it'll be better for everyone. But here's the thing that struck me on this hallowed St. Vincent's Day. Is that she basically got Evie Jennered, except she didn't escape.
Right.
Because the whole thing with their story is that she escapes from her like aunt and uncle who lock her in a room until she says she's going to marry her cousin. And the only thing that's different is that A, she escapes, and B, the Marchioness of whatever Schmergel, her husband like actually loved her. Evie's cousin didn't. What was his name? Dudley or something? He would not have actually loved her.
Right? Cousin Eustace?
Eustace? Maybe. Yeah. I feel like it's the same energy.
Right. Absolutely. And so Felix actually hears this story from a maid who just kind of there's this line, and I think he hears the story a little bit later, but there's this line like, at 6 he came to a shattering conclusion. His parents hated each other.
Oh.
And he gets the full story later that, so his mother was forced into this marriage, and she basically has taken to insinuating to his father that Felix might not be legitimate. Never anything like concrete, but just enough. Felix doesn't know that he's, like you were saying, he's basically this pawn between this man who's desperately in love with his own wife and this woman who is just determined to punish him for the rest of his life.
Yeah. And she really goes hard.
Boy.
Wow. To the point where, like, she'll give him affection while the dad is looking, but the moment the dad is not looking, she's like, oh, God, thank God I can embroider this iris again. Like, she absolutely does not care about him when the dad isn't looking. And she traps him there because she won't let him go off to school or do anything. She wants him to stay on the estate so that he's always just a needling reminder to her husband.
She
that,
forces him to homeschool when he could be hanging out with all of his besties so that she can use him as a fucking pawn. Like,
I know.
Ma'am.
Oh,
he's so sad. Like, if there's this, when he's a little kid, he talks about how he liked to like smell her clothes and stuff.
Oh,
because like
yeah.
the perfume in the air would and the from the fabric of her gowns would like let him pretend she was there and snuggling him. Like he's like he didn't understand for the longest time that all this love that she was showing him in front of his dad was a
facade.
real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was just desperate for it. And so the thing he learned from his childhood is that love gives people power over you, and that he is never, ever again going to seek approval and affection and like fall over himself to get that from anybody, because there's a chance they won't return it. And
then we pop in hot to Louisa.
Wait, but first, what's the last line of the prologue?
Oh yeah, tell us.
Yeah. So there's this line. He basically, a little could he guess, there was this woman out there he would marry, and the very last line is her name was Louisa Cantwell, and she would be his undoing.
She sure the fuck is.
I love that. There are like 2 times in this book where it almost feels like the perspective changes, like we're sort of an omniscient narrator the whole time. But I feel like there's 2 moments in the book where it like really zooms out, and this is one of those moments. Like he was, because his plan was like, I'm gonna be 50 and then I'll get married to like a 17-year-old dummy.
He specifically says until 45, then he'll marry a plump-faced shit of 17 years old. And I said, joke's on him, because he finds Louisa at 28.
That's exactly right. And then there's another time.
Like, she's going to be big-titted with no brains.
And dumb. Big-titted with just no brain cells pinging around in there. I want her hot and dumb, and that's exactly it.
Yep. Yeah. And then the second time, we'll get to it for, to like really talk about it. But the second time is when she says that, like, if I can't trust you like here and I can't trust you here, where can I trust you? And he basically says like, I thought you already learned not to trust me anywhere. And then she's like, okay, I'll take that. I'll try to, soak that in. And it says something like, little did he know how much he would regret when that came true.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I love a zoom out.
Yeah, the zoom outs are very fun. Yeah. Okay, I'm so sorry, Sabrina. Introduce us to Louisa.
No, you're fine. Yes. So we meet Louisa. We learn that she has 4 sisters, none of which are marriageable, because one is older and pockmarked, and she thinks she's the ugliest thing in the world.
Oh my God. She's not, FYI.
I don't remember why the other 2 are unmarriageable, but then the 4th one is unmarriageable because she has epilepsy, and she's going to have to be taking care of her whole life.
One of them insists on only kissing her best friend, Emily. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. I forgot that one of them's a little lesbian.
Yeah, it made me so happy.
Not enough in there. Right.
And she's decided that because of all of this, she has to marry a man with 5,000 pounds a year. Scratch that? 7,000 pounds a year.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Because she literally, when she realized that she was in charge of taking care of the family, that she had to marry well. And so she starts preparing. She buys bust improvers. She has a very strict regime with egg whites in her hair. She has skin regimes. She has all of these things. And she waits 8 fucking years to be able to be put out on the market, on the marriage market. And she's prepared. She's ready. And she knows all of the men's. All of the potential
she's
men.
Had
she's
lists
got her.
And lists of bachelors, and like she'll cross them out and then put new ones in, and she'll be like, oh no, this one's still at university, and like this one just got a big gambling debt, so he's gonna have to marry a fortune. And like she has stratagems upon stratagems.
And on top of that, she's mostly concerned about which of these men are malleable, because she needs a certain amount of money at her own whim and her disposal because of taking care of her family. She's a hard thinker, this this Louisa.
Yeah.
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 I feel like she also has big Evie energy in a way. Like, I think they were both kind of backed into a corner with their family situations. They're both like willing to marry literally whoever is financially placed to get them out of it. Like, Evie was obviously trying to escape her relatives so she could go see her dad. Whereas we've got epileptic sister here. But yeah, like she's got a plan. Like the line in the book where she talks about how, you know, when she was 16, like she realized all of the things she thought she might want, like weren't like all she wants is a cottage with as many books and like a good telescope and like the catalog that like lists all the stars. Like that's the only stuff she wants.
I fucking love a historical nerdy heroine.
I know. I know.
And it's heroine with a special interest.
She figures out, oh, yeah, dreams were for girls who could afford them. And so she crossed that list. Like, she gives herself a couple hours to just, like, have a breakdown. And she's like, nope, my new litter is everything I need to win a man with 5,000 pounds a year. And then Sabrina, she's like,
scratch that.
After, like, 2 times thinking on it, she crosses that. She's like, nope, 7,000 pounds.
Yeah. She's like, oh, wait, men are expensive, it turns out. Jesus.
Yeah, look, she's like, not only does it need to be enough money, like, I need to be able to command a certain percentage of that.
Yes.
Because, like, he could be rich, but if it can't get what I want out of it.
She's like, I'll accept somebody with 5,000 pounds if they give me command of 50% of the money. But if they only give me 20% of the money, then I need 7,000 pounds. Which, like, I love a girl who knows what she wants. You know, she's like, I know exactly what I need.
I love her because it's very similar to Evie. She's incredibly pragmatic, and there's not an ounce of like self-pity. You know, she's just like, I'm in this situation, and so we're going to make it work. We're going to marry whoever we have to. I'm not going to marry somebody that I loathe, but I don't have to love him. Yeah. And I don't know. I just really loved her.
She's at a ball and we have our meet cute because he shows up and he's just there. And initially she sees him and she feels that flutter. She's like, I like this man. And then she realizes that he is a little condescending towards her, but not openly, but just enough that she notices. And she's like, I don't want anything from a man that makes me feel like a money-grabbing, social climbing nightmare of a woman. And that's how he makes me feel.
Yeah, there's this moment, right, where she identifies him as
as a sexy man.
Or as the ideal gentleman in this case. I think the word's holy grail.
Because he's the ideal gentleman. Capitalized, okay? That comes up multiple times in this book that he's the
more times
ideal.
than the luckiest lady in London.
Oh, significantly so.
Well, yeah, because it's a persona that he's crafted to keep everybody away, to make sure nobody actually knows him.
Right. Yeah,
Love a Sebastian.
Like, his parents died, you know, they die in the prologue once he's, I think, in his like late teens, and he's like, nope, I'm remaking myself. Like, no one will ever have power over me. I will have power over everyone else. I will be the ideal gentleman. I will have the best reputation. No one will ever be able to say anything about me. And yeah, like he kind of moves forward in the world like that. And she, when they meet, has like 3 seconds of big, like, oh my God, I think I might love him.
Yeah.
And then just immediately it's like, wait a second.
There's something there.
Yeah.
What is under the surface? There's something there, and it seems a little bit malignant to her. And it's interesting because he is like you said, the Holy Grail. And one of those reasons is because in 1890s money, he makes 200,000 pounds a year.
Okay. I couldn't even Google how much money that was.
I couldn't bring myself to do it.
It made me ill just thinking about, you know what, fuck it. I'm doing it live on podcast. Y'all keep talking.
All right, please do. But I might die in front of you. Anyway, so she's like, I am a pragmatic person. I don't have any chance of catching this person. And that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for a very humble rich person. But, I can bask in the glow for a minute. And then she's like, wait a second. Like, he he sees through me and he's thinking the same thing. She sees through me. And he's like, every other girl would be like falling over themselves to, giggle at my face. And he can tell that she feels something that's a little bit off. And he is mega intrigued. Oh my God, Sabrina. Oh no, the look on your face. What is it? Oh no, I just got nauseous. What is it? Is it a number you can't read? I would understand.
Please wait. I'm converting it to dollars.
Okay.
I'm honestly offended he only offered her £1,000 a year. That is the equivalent in US dollars today.
No.
To 40 million.
No.
$580,243.64.
A year?
A year.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, there are little Oliver Twists running around all over the goddamn place. Like, this guy,
Well, now I gotta know. So £1,000 a year at that time. Yeah, she would be able to live very comfortably on £1,000. It's £161,000 a year. So like,
oh, okay, that's all right. It's nothing to sniff at. It's
but like also I could see if you're taking care of 4 siblings and a parent, that'd be rough until you marry them off. But like, that's why I'm offended.
Yeah, no, I hear that.
But she can stretch a pound.
Absolutely, she's very adept.
$40 million a year.
No, I just refuse, frankly.
Their first reaction is so interesting to me, their first interaction, because it's like they both recognize the same thing in each other. They're both like, oh, she might see me for who, like, he's like thinking, like, how is she the only one who can see through me? Like, no one can see through me. And she's kind of thinking something similar to him, but how they react to that is completely opposite. He immediately is like, okay, there's no hope for this. Like, he thinks that I'm grasping and a social climber. Like, she shuts down her 3-second dreams of being in love with him, like, immediately. And he, on the other hand, is intrigued by a woman for, like, the first time in his life.
Exactly. Now he's, like, finding reasons to cross paths with her.
Right.
Well, so, like, he comes across her in the park. They ride like next to each other for 60 seconds. That's all.
It's the most...
Very polite.
Oh my God. The amount in this book that's like the timing of etiquette. Like, etiquette dictates that, it's only couth to go ride next to somebody for 60 seconds. And like, the ladies visited for exactly 15 minutes before they got up and went to the next house. I'm just, oh my God.
Which, I'll be frank, this is too much. I would have been such a fucking hermit in 1890 if I was in this kind of position.
It's interesting. I can't decide. I mean, I probably would have, gone hermit, but I can't decide if it's not way easier.
I kind of love it. I kind of love all of the rules, frankly.
Because then you're like, I staying too long?
I will have calling hours from 1 p.m. until 3 p.m. You're allowed to stay for 15 minutes. And once a week, I will go visit other people for those hours. And the rest of the time, I'm going to spend knitting.
Well, and you never question, like, did I overstay my welcome? Did I talk too loud? Nothing.
All
the rules are there.
Don't worry. The anxiety gremlin will definitely.
It'll still
gonna be like, did you stay there too long? And it's like, maybe. Did I talk too loud? Well, probably. Especially because, like, let's be real. In 1890, there's probably a flask.
Well, and the funniest thing about the etiquette is, and I think she says this later on as she's looking back, but like, everything he's doing is kind of giving her the idea that he might be interested, but also has complete plausible deniability.
Yes.
Like, she could go back and look at every single one of his interactions later, and they could all be accounted for as just, the polite thing, or like, he's
or somebody insisting that they spend time together, or like, a favor to this person, or like,
until they no longer can, because guess what?
Right.
He's decided that he is going to make our heroine his mistress, but not really his mistress.
Yeah, not his mistress.
His, like,
more like his vacation bae?
His arm candy?
No, because they can't be public about it.
Except for at his house parties every 6 months.
Sure, but it still has to be kind of okay, listen, sorry, everybody. So after before this happens, though, really quickly, he has to navigate her current, situation. And so she's got two guys that are sort of on the hook for marriage. One is Lord Firth and the other is Mr. Pitt.
Yep.
And so she's like, both of these men are respectable. They're totally in my league. This can happen. And so
one's got more money, but the other one is more malleable.
Right. Yeah. So he asks her to dance, and as he's taking her on the thing, he's like,
a waltz.
Oh, a waltz, absolutely. The sensualist of dances, we find out in Ravished. Oh, it's so sensual. Okay.
Jean, boots with the fur.
Anyway, so as they're dancing, he's like, hey, by the way, your intel is bad. I'm so sorry. The two guys that you're after, your intel's bad. She's like, how does he even know what guys I'm after? And he's like, let's not, don't. So the first guy, his parents aren't going to let him marry anybody that doesn't have like the fattest dowry. Yeah.
Right.
They're not doing well financially.
And then don't worry, the other guy is fucking his half-sister.
She says, is there anything wrong with Mr. Firth? And he's like, he's got his finances are fine. His reputation is great. But did I mention that he does have sex with his sister?
And
like,
I'll
be honest, like I've read lots of books, and so like I haven't not read a step sibling romance. That's
totally.
That's
half
whatever.
is like a different situation.
That is like, which I'm not gonna say I haven't read that too.
No, absolutely. But we all go to weird places late at night.
That is
yeah,
not this.
And it's interesting because the half sister has been mean mugging her the entire time she's been trying to get to know this guy.
It's believable. It's fully believable that she and Firth.
It checks out, I guess.
Oh, yeah. She's like, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole.
Walk up to him or her and be like, hey, are you fucking hiding the sausage in your blood relative? No. You're not going to fucking do that. You're not going to do that nowadays, let alone in 1890.
Oh, my God.
I mean, it is a great, because you're right. No one's going to check up on that. Or hopefully. No. I mean, it's like, there is the chance if she was more of a gossip, she could tell someone else.
And ruin them.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
But thankfully, she's a better chick than that.
It all works out, right? So she now has all of this quote-unquote good intel. And like they keep running into each other. So there's the carriage incident. There is a time where
the carriage incident with that double entendre.
Whoa. We're not there yet. Whoa.
I'm so sorry.
Back it up, bitch.
Whoa. Sabrina's in the driver's seat. Here we go.
Yeah, so we do that. He ends up coming to dinner because one of her potential beaus isn't able to make it. And so he comes to dinner instead.
And we find out that he's the one who convinced the guy to go home so that he couldn't make it, so that he could take his spot at dinner. It's Machiavellian.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. And then this is when he has decided. He is fully on board. He's like, I am making this bitch my mistress. I'm making her like, this is gonna happen. I'm gonna give her a house. I'm gonna give her some money. She doesn't know that yet.
No. There's this line. He says, like, until this moment, Miss Cantwell had been an intellectual, almost impersonal riddle. Now, for the first time, he became sexually aware of her.
Yes.
And it's because he says it was an entirely new experience for him to be physically appealing to a woman who otherwise did not care for him. I mean, it was a rather ferocious word. Like, I just can't get enough of the psychology of, like, him being interested in her disinterest.
Yes.
But the fact that she might be physically attracted to him, but hate his personality is what actually gets him.
I feel like, let's be real, even if she wasn't sexually interested in him, he just saw that as some way he could get in. That was his in. It's not that he, he would have been into it even if she wasn't sexually interested. He was too intrigued by the fact that she was not interested in him as a person that he would have pursued her. But his way to get that.
Yeah, because listener, we haven't said this explicitly, but like not only does she identify him as a sexy person, but like her pheromones exude it when she's around him.
Cannot hide
he can
it.
tell.
She does not have a quiet face. She does not have an inside face. She has,
although she thinks she does. She doesn't have an inside face to him, but she thinks she's very inscrutable otherwise.
Well, she is. Nobody else has any fucking idea. They think everything is hunky-dory, peachy keen.
That's true.
Meanwhile, they're like, let's play games with each other.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I love about this is after they have several talks about, you know, her marriageability and her options and all this kind of thing, and the way that she responds, because on the one hand, she's like, I'm here to take care of my sister. And on the other hand, she's like, I'm not going to martyr myself for my sister.
Right.
Especially if, like, because he poses this question, like, will Matilda, you know, won't you marry somebody just for Matilda, even if you loathe them? And she's like, if my sister wanted me to do that, then she wouldn't be a very good sister, and I shouldn't martyr myself for somebody who doesn't love me. And there's this moment where he says that she is not quite a shark, but she is a dolphin. Yeah. She's like smart. She's cunning.
Rapist of the
She's. It's just never. They didn't know that then. I don't think
they did not know that then. But that was all I could think. The minute they were like,
"I know
she's a dolphin," I was like, "Oh no,
I know,
oh no."
But anyway, she's like smart and cunning and all the things, and so she might not be a shark, but it says she's definitely a predator. And that is so hot to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I love it so much. And I don't know, even though she doesn't like him, there is sort of this begrudging respect that she has for him because of the way he manipulates society. Like they both like this about each other.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So now they get semi-Pride and Prejudice. It says this in the book. Somebody sets it up so that they don't have a carriage in a big rainstorm. And, oh, look, Felix is available and very happy to lend the carriage to whomever needs it if she needs it. And so then the relative that they're with says like, oh, I just remembered this meeting I have with a solicitor at my brother's house. Just remembered. I need you to drop me off early. Golly, look at me go.
Pause.
What?
We got to go back for a second because some really important shit happens.
Oh, what?
Oh, yeah.
So they end up in the reading room, right? So they're seen in public together again. Like it's happenstance, but
he can't help but sit down. He could have just nodded and walked away, but he can't.
And this is already when she realizes after the reading room she's in love with him.
Yes.
And she realizes it like immediately. And she realizes all at once she understood why she had not said yes 2 nights before. Because before the walking stick, he has proposed to her the mistress-ship.
He did?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And she said no that night. But she says why she continued to play this dangerous game, she was afraid of losing him. Once she became his mistress, once he was free to satisfy himself on her, it would be the beginning of the end. But as long as she resisted, as long as his lust simmered unfulfilled, there was a chance he would remain part of her life.
Yeah, it's the Anne Boleyn strategy.
Yeah. And then she realizes that she's in love with him, which is why she's been putting up with this shit. And she says because love was in a state of mind liable to change from hour to hour, day to day. Love was like smallpox. Even the survivors did not escape unscathed.
I love them so much.
They're both so... What the fuck? But then she starts to realize, so she realizes that she's a woman in love, and she wants nothing less than his unscrupulous and very possibly unprincipled heart preferred to her in slavish devotion. And she's realizing, though, because he's horny for her, that she is just as powerful in this situation as Felix is, because he wants her just as much as she wants him.
Maybe in a different way.
Yeah, Sabrina, you mentioned them in the reading room, and that was actually one of the parts I highlighted. Because he walks up to her and he says like, Miss Cantwell, an unexpected pleasure. And she said the way he lingered over the syllables of that last word, he might as well seduce virgins from good families twice a week. And he was saved from ridiculousness only by her even more disproportionate response. It talks about her pupils and her pulse and everything.
Yeah.
And I just wrote, like, these two are so horny for each other.
So horny.
From get.
Yes. And okay, so really quickly, what she's referencing, this mistress situation, they go on a picnic and they end up on a walk, and he says that he's never going to get, like, he's not marrying, but if she were to trade, other things, he would give her a house and $1,000 a year, and she would only need to see him for two-week spans at his house for like his summer party. That's where they would have their trysts. And then for the rest of the 11 months of the year, she could just be like an independently wealthy lady.
Which, like, to be clear, take that. Oh my God. I would have taken that so fast. I get to just fuck off and live in my own home with a library and
yeah.
And oh God,
listen, man, here's the thing.
I'll moon over you for 48 weeks out of the year, in exchange for a library and a house. It's fine.
I mean, but okay, listen, I had a different opinion before I knew that the salary was $160,000 a year. And at that point, it doesn't seem so bad. Yeah, but she's like, absolutely not. I am a virgin from a good family. I was raised in a way that makes that absolutely impossible. And I don't care how horny I am for you. I'm going to be in a marriage bed.
It's what she says to him. But in the back of her head, she's like, it is diabolical that he did this with weeks of the season left to go, because I know I'm going to continue to think about this offer.
Yeah.
And he's slowly going to wear me down.
Yeah. Because she's like, it's not off the table,
but
it.
Don't worry, listener. He is even more jealous and impatient than she is. Because... So they do. This is where we get to the walking stick
carriage.
Scene.
Oh my God. Okay. This horny walking stick. So the cousin fucks off and they're in the carriage together now. And they're talking about, like, what is it? She says something about, like, it's not an appendage. But basically they start this innuendo about how his walking stick is,
his walking
phallic.
stick is his dick.
It's very phallic.
Right.
And he keeps on, like, swirling his finger over the tip. And then she has it in her hand. And then she leans down and kisses it on the tip. And, like, he cannot handle his entire life. And she says, "The things you make me do, my lord, they're so vulgar," or something like that. And he's like, "Are you sure it's me? Because, like...
Okay,
so
listener,
horny."
She is one of the horniest historical heroines I have ever read in a book. Because at this point,
love her.
They have had all sorts of conversations. Like, they met up in a music room at a ball. And, one of the horniest historicals I've read in a long time.
Yes, she tells him at that music room that she dreams about him getting her naked and doing terrible things to her.
Is that when the folly conversation happens?
Yes.
Because she has researched what kind of things are on his estate, and she has fantasies and dreams at night about him fucking her in a semi-public play. This is one of the only historicals I have ever put into the kink voyeurism kink exhibitionism tag. Like,
Well, and on top of the fact, she's got a couple of, like, old maiden aunts that
Yes.
were apparently like prostitutes, courtesans. They were sex workers, and she would hear them when she was like a kid, basically gossiping about. I think she heard them gossiping about some other man's mistress and saying she was flat chested but made up with it by performing unnatural acts.
Uh-huh.
Which
Oh,
she
yeah.
decided to adopt as her personal backup plan in case anyone
'Cause she's
objects
got
to the
tiny
size of her
boobs.
own. Yeah, she's like, it's fine. I'll just be DTF.
She's like, it's
and they
fine
won't
if I use
mind."
bust improvers where I only have
Exactly.
30% of actual tit, because guess what? I'll do some fucking nasty shit in the bedroom.
That's right. That's
Like-
right. I am GGG. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as she kisses this thing, he's like overcome. And then she says, I hope that works like with the butcher. And he's like, okay, I don't know what you mean. Because he's like, how will you get this person to marry you? And she says, well, I think it'll depend on whether or not I can convince him I love his walking stick. And then he's like, wait a second, the butcher? And she's like, yeah, my mom told me that I couldn't marry like a butcher or a greengrocer or any of the like. But their money's still green, man. And like their money will still take care of Matilda if they have enough of it. So yeah, there's a butcher who's hot for me and I'm not opposed. And he's like, oh my God, I have been strategizing to defeat all of the gentlemen. I can't also compete against all the tradesmen and have any hope of actually landing this lady as a mistress. So like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? And he is hard pressed for answers. He doesn't know.
Don't worry, we don't have to wait long, because
Nope.
literally the next scene is they're having tea. It's their receiving hour, and it's the very end of it, the very end of the day. And then guess who fucking shows up after everybody's been gossiping about how much attention he's already been paying attention to her? He shows up at fucking receiving hour and he's like, hey, can we talk?
Yeah.
After he's a perfect gentleman, there's 5 minutes left
Yes.
in his 15-minute allotment. He's been sitting there chatting with the ladies.
Oh,
and
he's been
like,
charming everyone.
Of course he is. And then he takes her, he requests a private word. They're shown to the morning room and they get horny again, unshockingly. Wait, hang on. So
Yes.
she says, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And he says, what
Yeah.
does it look like I'm doing? Do as I say or I'll keep opening your blouse. She blinked, not sure whether she wanted him to stop. He laughed softly. My God, don't tell me you want me to go on. When have I ever given you the idea that I wouldn't want you to go on? He shook his head. You give me no choice. Fine. I'll ask nicely. Please tell me one of your dreams, my dear Miss Cantwell. She swallowed. That isn't nice enough. You have to say, my dear Louisa. He looked at her strangely for a moment. Won't you please, my dear, dear Louisa?
Oh,
Her
my God.
name on his lips was pure music. She wanted to hear it again and again. My dear, dear Louisa. And then she does tell him a horny dream.
yeah.
Well, but wait, I feel like we have to give listener the layers of this scene.
Yes.
Because this is an emotionally fraught and yet still horny. Like not even her looking at definite public humiliation can stop her horny. So they walk into this room and she's like, what are you doing? We were just out there with like 3 of the biggest gossips in society, and you ask for a private word. Like, they're going to expect you to be asking me to marry you. And like, we both know you're not going to do that. So like, what am I going to tell them? Like, am I just going to tell them that like, you're here to ask me to tell you one of my smutty dreams? And he's like, great idea. Tell me a smutty dream. And then all of that happens. And she's like, of course I'm horny for you. She tells him about the dream. And then he says, I'm here to rescind my offer. The offer has expired and I'm done with it. She starts crying and she doesn't even realize she's crying. Like she's just leaking sorrow, out of her eyeballs. And he says, I thought you were, your moral superiority would make it so you weren't hurt. And she says, well, my soul is very glad that this is happening, but my vanity is crushed. And he, meanwhile, we find out a little bit later, is like, I don't know that anybody else would like actually cry over not being able to spend time with me. You know, like I made her this awful offer, like this really like degrading offer in her eyes. And yet she still is crying now that I don't want to spend time with her. Except he's doing a big fake out because he says, I'm rescinding this offer. But she says, okay, great. So what am I supposed to tell those ladies in literally 45 seconds?
Right. We're running out of time.
Yeah. And he says, well, I need you to tell them that in exactly 3 weeks' time, you're going to be married. And she says, what? And he looks at her like she's a very slow child. It says.
So then he is like, well, I'm marrying you, obviously. But she's like, why would you ever marry me? And he says, because young ladies who confess to pornographic reveries ought to be rewarded with riches beyond their dreams. And like, you know what, dude? Fair.
Yes. Well, because like before that, he's like, aren't you going to take the offer? And she's like, well, yeah, of course I'm going to take it. Like, I came to London for this exact, like, to marry the largest fortune I could find, and there's none available larger than yours. But why would you marry me?
And he's like, because you're a horny toad.
It's horny toad season.
Rip it.
Yeah. Yes.
And then she's like, I still have my last £1,000 a year, though.
I love her. She's like, I want it in the marriage contract. And he's like, why do you still want that? And she's like, I need my safety net. Like, I don't know. This could fall out from under my life at any moment. It looks too good to be true, she says. And so they barter. He says, I'll give you 500. And she says, I will marry you for no less than 800 pounds a year.
And a house with 30 rooms.
Yes. And as there's this pause, her inner monologue is like, oh no, like, actually, jokes, you don't have to pay me anything. Like, take my mom's brooch, take everything.
Like, actually, I'll pay you like 10 pounds.
Yeah. I've got an 11-pound emergency fund. Do you want that? Like, will you marry me then? And then he's like, all right, 800, but I'm going to punish you for this, he says. And the one thing I do have to say about this book, that there wasn't enough punishment from him to her. There wasn't enough spanking. Thank you very much.
There could have been at least 50% more spanking, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's motor. They get married.
They do. Boy. So she does find out that he's going to give her 5,000 pounds a year instead. And she does confess that she
because of
wears
his reputation, right? Like,
yes.
I couldn't be seen to be not giving my wife this much money.
She also confesses to him that she wears bust improvers and that only at most 35% of her breasts are real.
And she does this because she could keep that to herself for 800 pounds a year. But if you're saying 5,000, like, I really need to be more transparent here. Yes. And he's like, wait, so how were you going to make up for it? And she's like, well, I was the, unnatural acts. And you are a gentleman who would definitely be interested in unnatural acts.
He understands him.
And he tells her to keep wearing the breast improvers because he loves a secret. And the secret is bigger as in proportion to the inverse of the size of her chest.
He's like, get bigger ones.
It's so cute.
Well, and one of my favorite things is he's like, is that what you think marriage is? A hotbed of honesty and transparency? And she says, well, no. And he says, exactly. If I know you will go online. Bust improvers or no. And she says, then why did you propose to me? And he says, because you will never have headaches. And she says, I beg your pardon. And he says, nothing. Just know that I'm looking forward to being the most happily married man in the empire.
And then she says, does anybody complain about their wives being too enthusiastic about the bedroom? And he just can't. Like, he doesn't know what to do with himself. But on a more, like, serious note, part of the reason that he's sort of obfuscating every time she asks why he's marrying her, because she asked him several times. She's like, what the fuck? You weren't going to get married. Why are you doing this now? Why are you doing this with me? And he keeps on dodging the question because he doesn't know. He's like, I don't understand. And so I can't even come up with a believable lie because I don't know where the truth is to pivot from.
Yeah, that's actually...
But, like, we all know.
I feel like I highlighted that somewhere. I can't find it right now, but I remember it because it's such a beautiful metaphor, because I think he actually talks there. So both of them, I think we mentioned that Louisa, like, is really into astronomy. Like, she always wanted a telescope
Yes.
as a child. And there was one that she basically would go by this consignment shop for like a year and look at, and someone purchased it, and she never would have been able to afford it anyways, but someone got to it before she could. And so she's always loved astronomy. And we know that Felix also really loves astronomy. And he's talking about trying to figure out why he loves her, or why he agreed to marry her. And he can't, because he doesn't even know, or like you were saying, it's like he can't lie if he doesn't know what the truth is. And it's like not
he says
being
something
able
about
to
constellations.
right, not being able to pinpoint like what the constellations are if you don't even know where you are in space.
Yeah.
And it was I thought it was a beautiful astronomical metaphor.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and on giving gifts as a love language, don't worry, for the wedding, he does get her the exact telescope that she's been lusting after her entire life. And he's like, you're unlucky enough that your family knew exactly what it was you wanted, because I was going to get you a much better telescope. But I got you this one instead.
And oh my God, I love this though, because he says, I know it's, sort of lame to be like, your present is hundreds of miles away. So in place of that, I got you this book on stars and stuff, on astronomy. And she looks at it and she's got like this stricken look on her face. And he's like, oh, if you can't read French, like, that's okay. Is this a stupid gift or whatever? And she's like, no, I don't understand how you always know exactly my heart's content, because I've wanted this book since I was a child.
Yeah, this was on her list. This was Methier's catalog or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Well, and then she does make a comment that, like, it's unnerving because he's the type of man as much to give her heart's desire as to torment her with it.
Yes. Yes.
Because she knows exactly what kind of man he is. And so she knows what she's getting into. She knows she needs to watch herself, because she was like, I can never tell this man that I love him. Ever.
No.
He can never know. This is a secret that I'm going to take to my grave, because he's never going to give it to me.
Right. It's so funny, because at least while I was reading it, and you might have a different impression, but this was one of those things where it seemed like she was seeing through him.
Mm-hmm.
Because once again, like, his reputation is sterling. He would never do anything ungentlemanly. And so the fact that she's even worried about this, when he's actually given her he's done no action other than, like, I guess, offer to make her his mistress, that would tell her that he would use her heart's desire to crush her. And yet she just, like, knows it in her bones.
Well, so the biggest thing is that she has been well aware this entire time that they're playing games.
Yeah.
And so she is like, he's a game master is what he is. I cannot give up the only thing that like, this is my hand.
It's her trump card.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, there's a line right after they get married where they're talking, and she basically concludes the conversation with, so I don't trust you and you don't understand me. And he laughed despite himself. No wonder we get along so well. So like, that's how they're going into this marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and just, like, horny.
And I just gotta say, they have a fantastic wedding night. She throws a hairbrush at him because he took too long. Waiting. He was like, yeah, I'll be up after dinner, and then he makes her wait an hour, and when he walks in, she's like,
more game.
she throws a hairbrush at him, and she's like, how fucking dare you make me wait this long? I don't even want it anymore. Spoiler alert, she did want it.
She does.
And they do do the do, and it's on TM and it's high.
And listener, I don't know what percentage we are into this book. I think it's like 50, but they have not even kissed yet.
No kisses. No.
All of it has been intellectual and verbal.
And horny.
And horny. And so he, like, stalks up to her like a panther. And he's about to kiss her, and in his mind he's like, I'm gonna do a big seduce on her, and I'm gonna edge her real hard, and yeah, I'm gonna be suave, and I'm gonna be a good lover. And then he just pounces on her like a liger.
Yeah. And he literally, to the point where he is so lost in her that he doesn't even get undressed. And then immediately post coitus, he realizes just how much, like how close to the line he is, because the line between obsession and love is direly close.
Yes.
And he realizes how obsessed he is with her. And he's like, I can't love. And he decides, like a nincompoop, like a ding-dong.
Oh my God.
Guess what, listener? We have another ding-dong book. They're all ding-dongs. Well, no, she's not a ding-dong. He's
so
a
was
ding-dong.
Sebastian. So
yeah.
Right.
Here we go.
He decides he's got to stay the fuck away.
And it's interesting because he does have this moment of like better angels in his inner monologue, because there's a moment where he's like, there's this little voice that says, but she's obsessed with you too. And he's like, shut it down. No, nobody can have power like that over me.
By the way, I do have to share one super cute thing because it does come back later and I will be bringing it up later. When she gets her telescope, he has it trained on a really weird place. Okay. And when she goes and looks in that telescope, finally, it is set to look at one of the Greek folly. And he has made 2 dress dummies dressed up like them. Standing
in a seductive
seductive escape position. And
like maybe he's behind her.
Well, and later he's like, man, I really should have realized this obsession might be getting out of hand at some point. Well, I was carting these dummies out here and carrying them up a hill and going back and forth to the house multiple times to make sure they were positioned correctly. Like, it did not occur to me once during that time that I was doing this just to make her smile, and like, it might be getting out of hand.
Yeah, so then don't worry, listener. He does do the full ding-dong thing of not paying a single scrap of attention to her and avoiding
hard
her
the next day. And they're supposed to be like throw a party. So he ghosts her hard, and then she's like, okay, well, I'll see you up in the room. And he's like, catch my farts. Absolutely not.
And then guess what? The house party starts. They haven't talked. They have not fucked again. They aren't interacting with each other, like, at all.
Yeah, so she plays hostess. And then once she follows him a little bit and overhears while he's in the billiards room with the boys that, like, he's got to go soon because he's got, a wife to tend to. He's a married man with duties now. And she's like, is he lying or is he really coming to my room? And as they walk up together, she says, I'd like to speak with you. And he says, should we go into my study? And so they go into his rooms, and she's like, why are you no longer my lover? And he says, I don't know why I wouldn't be. And she says, you haven't touched me in 2 days. And he's like, okay, so 48 hours like makes it so I'm not your lover anymore. Like, that seems like a lot. And she says, like, you gave me the impression, you said the words that, like, the honeymoon is going to be all sex all the time. You definitely made me believe that. Yeah.
She says, yet I'm confident you said to me on our wedding night that you wanted to fuck me every hour of every day. Like, he was just like out of his mind babbling. Well, they talk about how, like, on their wedding night, like, basically their entire season together had been the foreplay. And he just lost it completely. He doesn't even remember what he was saying. But apparently that was one of the things that made an impression on her.
Yeah. And then and this is where all of my sphincters clenched. I was like, oh no, this is going to go sideways real fast. He says, the word of advice, don't believe anything that a man says while he's fucking you. And she's like, I don't understand, like, this turn. I don't understand, like, why he's being cold to me. And she's like, I'm going to see, if it's real or if it's just rhetoric, So she steps up to him and he doesn't really move. And so she steps up again and he moves back a little bit. And then she reaches up and she puts her lips on his jaw. And then she like licks him a little bit and he steps back, but then she kisses his neck. And then suddenly she's up against the wall. And she's like, finally. And she says, kiss me. And he says, but that wouldn't satisfy you, would it? And you're here for satisfaction. And then she doesn't say anything. And he says, say yes, and I'll make it happen.
I'll relieve you.
I'll relieve you. So she says yes. And then all of a sudden her skirts are flying up and he is fingering her to completion. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is great. Here we go. And she reaches for him after she's done. And he immediately steps away. And when he's halfway across the room, he takes a handkerchief out of his jacket, wipes his hand as if he had touched something dirty, and then threw it in the wastebasket.
Yep.
And then he said, I think my duties are done.
Yeah, and she says, quote, but not until this moment did she realize just how fortunate she had always been. She had never before been dealt such deliberate cruelty. He had meant to humiliate her. He had meant to demock her desire for him, and he had meant to show once and for all how little he cared for her.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and Sherry Thomas is just so incredible with it because, I mean, it's not kidnapping your best friend and taking her to Scotland or whatever, but it is somehow exactly as horrible and devastating.
Yeah, like this was his St. Vincent moment where you're like, this is how, wow.
Right. It wasn't even the like proposing to make her his mistress or anything. Like,
no.
It's this. It is just, it's such a short, small thing, but they both know exactly what he's done. And it's horrible.
Devastating.
Yeah.
Can I just tell you, I was on the treadmill at the gym while listening to this part. And I realized toward the end of the scene that I literally, my mouth was hanging open. One eyebrow was like up. I had this look of horror on my face. And I looked in the mirror, realized what my face looked like, and then looked over and then realized why this lady was like really concerned about me. And oh my God, I was just like, how can he do this?
And he knows too. Like he talked about how she leaves, and he's like already he's trying to think about how he can fix this and how he can make it better.
And like the answer is you cannot.
Right. Mm-hmm. And he's like he says like this was why he must never allow himself to love. He was all too capable of it, all too willing to give, and all too accustomed to keep giving, even when his gifts were rejected left and right. And it's
what a fucking ding dong!
She hasn't done that to you
once.
Right.
You are traumatized.
Yeah, and he's like, it's so ironic because he never wanted his parents' marriage, and he is literally digging himself into that.
He's
exact
creating
hole.
it.
Yeah.
Yes, he is creating it.
So this is when she takes a full step back. She realizes something is happening, and she's like, I'm not going to fucking stand for this. And
there's no coming back from this.
Yeah, right. And so he can tell that she's upset.
And, yeah. Hilarious Felix.
Well, and then this is when Drummond starts paying attention and Felix notices. And so he starts going and pulling Drummond away. He can tell that Drummond is paying extra special attention to Louisa. And he's like, nope, we're not going to fucking do that.
Oh, yeah, because one of the things he says is like, I imagine that Lady Tremaine's presence is just as like concerning as Drummond's presence is to me. Because his old lover has shown up. And she's like busty and she is sophisticated and she's all the things that Louisa thinks she's not.
And don't worry, listener, because she's getting a book later too.
Oh, yeah, she is. And I love it. So, yeah, Drummond is there. And he says that like Drummond's secret superpower is being able to sense marital discord.
Yes.
And like going and giving the lady exactly what her chump of a husband can't. Woo. So now she like goes and sits in the library and she's going to read just like in the corner. Nobody can see her. It's this private alcove. And she hears somebody come in and take a turn about the library and then leave. And then shortly after, Lady Tremaine comes in talking with someone, and Felix answers. So she knows that her husband is in there with his former lover.
Mm-hmm.
So Lady Tremaine is like, hey, bud, you're looking so good. And like, you're so good at tennis. Have I told you that lately? You're just like so athletic and like your muscles and stuff. And also, I have seen you walking around at night and like not pleasuring your wife. Like, why are you doing that? Why aren't you on your honeymoon? And he's like, why would you be able to see me outside? And she's like, well, I'm also having a hard time sleeping, you know? So I was wondering if maybe you wanted to come
know
and
what helps
help
us
me
sleep?
Ooh.
Orgasms.
And she says
doesn't-
she asks him to meet her at midnight. And he doesn't shoot her down, but he also doesn't agree.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the door closes, the bookshelf that she's behind moves out of the way. And he's like, I thought you might be here. And Louisa in this moment is goals, because I don't think I could comport myself with this amount of restraint.
No.
She just says, oh, can I do something for you?
This is one of those moments where I'm like, I'm too polyamorous to have lived in 1890. Because I'd have been like, use protection, bud. I don't want syphilis, but like, does she
Yeah.
want company? Like,
Mm-hmm.
We could all have a great time.
exactly. Like, but
Louisa's
also,
not into it.
but also, like,
No.
Lady Tremaine, it's very clear, like, she's looking
Well,
to
it'd
fuck
be-
up a marriage because she was unhappy
There's something
when
happening.
she came back from. So she disappeared off to Switzerland. She has a estranged relationship with her husband. When she gets back from her trip, she is clearly very unhappy that
Yeah.
Felix
Something
Well,
happened.
is married.
And I think it also becomes
No.
clear that both Felix and Lady Tremaine knew that Louisa was in there while they were having that conversation.
Oh, you think Lady Tremaine?
Really?
knew?
Yeah, I feel like there is a comment later where I wish I had highlighted it, but I'm pretty sure she knew. And
Oh,
Yeah.
Intrigue. I did not read that, but I don't hate it. Wow. Well, no, she wasn't mad that he was married. She was just surprised. She's mad because something happened on the Scandinavia trip.
yeah,
And
but I
like
think
she's
that
just
she,
generally
I think that she was
upset.
pissed off. Not that he's not specifically that he's married. I think she's pissed off in general, and that the guy that she could come home and blow her back out with
Yeah, sure.
is no longer available.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I meant by her being mad.
I see. Okay. So basically she's like, if I can't help you with anything, I'd really like to get back to reading. And so he shuts the bookcase and then he stands there.
What
And
a
he's like,
Sebastian.
All I want to do is open the bookcase and go to her. And it's not even that I want sex. I just want to sit next to her and snuggle and like watch the clouds clear across the sky with her. I just want to. Oh.
He's so broken and he's
But I
so
can't.
sad.
But I can't. I have to go. Oh no.
So
we find out, listener, that when he's on those fucking 4 a.m. walks, he's standing in the shadows watching her look out her telescope. He's just peeping on his wife.
That's right, but he could have just been fucking if he wasn't such a
He could have
head case.
been blissfully happy with.
like, guess what?
Ugh.
You could be looking through the telescope too, and that's not even an innuendo because you're both
No.
big old fucking science nerds.
Yes. Oh my God. So anyway,
then
yes. Tell them.
Then he witnesses what looks like Louisa setting up a tryst in the fucking Greek folly with Lord Drummond. And he is not
Wow.
about it. And he walks away, but then at midnight he shows up in the Greek folly and she's looking off into the distance and he doesn't say anything. And she makes some comments like it took you.
Isn't the house so beautiful at night?
Mhm.
And
Right.
did you know I've always been interested in the stars, even from when I was a
Mhm.
little kid?
and
Did you bring the blindfold by any chance?
And then he does blindfold her and then silently fucks the shit out of her.
Yes.
And I love this because when they're done, he like pushes away from her and all he can think is she let Drummond inside her. She let Drummond spill himself inside her. And then when she turns around and takes off the blindfold, there's no look of shock, nothing on her face.
Well, and it's like distraught because like while she was before she was blindfolded, before they had sex, she's like, I used to have dreams of fucking in a like having relations in a carriage with a man that like
a man.
drives
It doesn't
me
matter
crazy.
who the man was.
Right.
And that's when he like kisses her and starts their tryst so that he doesn't have to listen to her really mean words, it says. So then he's like,
Because she's playing, to be clear, listener, she's playing the game right back. She got hurt, and now she's bringing the fucking heat.
She knew that he would think that she was setting something up with Drummond, and she knew this whole time it wasn't Drummond, it was him.
Yeah. So what happens is she doesn't. Yeah. Please.
Well, he tells her, "I was never going to sleep with Lady Tremaine," because he thought she'd done this thing with Drummond to get back at him for that, and she responds to him. And I told Drummond to stay away from the pavilion because it's the wasp. And then she just fucks off.
Walks away.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the moment where he realizes that, like, staying away from his obsession, trying to quash his obsession with her is not working, and it's not helping, and it's not sustainable. And so why not just lean all the way back into their marriage? But also, like, without talking about it or really saying much of an apology or anything like that. Like, he goes into her room and they end up having sex, and, you know, like, it says that he, like, kisses her and caresses her until she can no longer stay still. And he leaves her and they, like, see all of their guests off, and he's like, wow, Lady Remington. I don't know what their names are.
Renworth, I think.
Renworth, there we go. Lady Renworth, everybody's going to be talking about what a great hostess you are. And she says, yeah, and what marital bliss we live in, I bet, too.
I just want to say, I cannot believe, Melody, that you just accepted Renworth instead of coming up with your... Okay, so Taylor, to give you some context, we just recently did Ravished by Amanda Quick, and that episode is not out yet.
Right.
But she fully just word associated the hell out of people's names.
I was really tired.
It turned into a fucking bonkers ass time. Like, I would love to hear your thoughts after you listen to the episode. But like, truly, it was like
I was so tired.
Lady Apple Bottom Doorman and like all sorts of crazy shit. And then and to be clear, what I'm getting at is that I give her the real name and she just whimsies it away. She just says fuck it. And then Taylor, you come in here, so, like not her fucking co-host. But you come in here and you're like, hey, guess what? The name's actually Renworth. And she's like, oh yeah, perfect. Let's fucking adopt that. That's the real name.
I think part of it is because I actually heard what she said. I was so in my head, I didn't hear you say that.
This is not the first time this has happened, Melody.
Wow. Okay. Well,
just calling you out as I don't even know what to say to you.
And yet we would not have gems like Lady Whipplebottom and
that's what it was.
Sir Applebottom Doorman.
Sir Applebottom.
His actual name was Applegate, and I came up with Applebottom Doorman.
Mm-hmm.
So like it was a rough recording, really.
And like, hey, it's beautiful. It's gonna be very delightful, but also like how dare
Renworth.
I have given you the real name before, and you're just like, fuck that name.
Absolutely.
Fuck you and the horse you rode in on. I don't give a shit about that name.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry. The other thing that happens before everybody leaves, is this true? Or is this Christmas? I think it's Christmas. I'm so sorry.
Oh. Yeah, that's he has 2 annual house parties a year.
Yeah.
This one's the summer one, and then he'll have a Christmas one.
Yeah.
Well, so at this
they
point,
go on a picnic.
Yeah. So they go on a picnic, and she tells him, because he starts getting a little frisky, and she's like, or like a little lovey-dovey swoony, and she's like, I require only 5,000 pounds a year from you, sir.
And that's it. And he's like, well, that's the bare minimum that I should give you. And she's like, news to me. And so he's trying to just like re-enter their blissful marriage without actually making amends with her or doing anything, because he is having a really hard time making words like with her chilly demeanor or whatever.
Well, and that's he has the most amazing thought about that, because he says, like, I'd like to repair matters between us, and she says, like, I know that relations were strained.
Oh,
And
I love her.
He realized her words were full of condescending bite. He realized with more than a little startlement that she might be mimicking him rather than some imaginary dowager duchess. And I was like, my God, he taught her how to be a piece of shit back to him. Like,
yes.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, you're really reaping what you sow here.
Yeah.
Truly. And so he decides to make amends by going down on her multiple times in the meadow.
Well, before that, she asks him why he behaved abominably, and he comes up with some cockamamie nonsense.
Yeah, he says like he didn't want them to get into each other and tire of each other.
Yeah, and tire of each other too fast.
Nonsense.
Like, I'm so sorry, sir. No.
Well, and doesn't she say that?
Yeah, well,
she's like, that's a terrible lie.
She takes him to task, and like she takes him to task for it, and she's like, absolutely not. That's not how this works. And then he tells her, I like it when you call me out on my bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's pretty great.
And then they do have sexy times on that blanket. He does go down on her like a champ.
Yeah, and then afterwards, because she's like, this is a really crude strategy, and he's like, yep. You're totally right. Absolutely. And then as he's talking with her more, he tells her to like come over here, and they end up snuggling with her back to his front and like his legs around her. And then they end up having sex, and like he won't stop looking into her eyes. He just like desperately wants to be connected, because she keeps on saying like, I need you to explain. And he's like, why do you need words when you can just look at my actions? And that's how he wants to repair things.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't understand why she's still super skittish.
Right.
Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Drives me nuts.
And then here's your quote that is a big old zoom out, where she says, don't be so pleased with yourself, she admonished. I distrust you and will continue to do so. And he says, your distrust is the spice that gives my life flavor, he said grandly. Long may your suspicions simmer. Little did he know how much he would come to regret that statement.
Yeah.
Right. For this whole time, he's been like, oh God, there was this line about how he must be like such a pervert. And this is very early in the book.
Yeah.
Because he says, I found it. And he, budding pervert that he was, found her sullen, suspicious glare terribly stimulating. I was like, that moment is like, that's like he in the beginning finds so attractive, this like suspicion of him, but he gets far enough into their relationship that that's not enough for him anymore. And I mean, like you said, by the time we get to this zoom out, like that's gonna be a thought that haunts him. Basically.
Yeah, because he doesn't understand the ramifications when that comes to like actual reality, like real emotions, real relationships. That was when she was just, sort of an avatar in his mind. But oof, it's bad. So they end up being like, sort of making nice, playing house together. Yeah. She decides to just sort of go with it because his actions are showing that he's a really attentive husband and a really enthusiastic lover and like really here, and showing her that he cares about more than just her body without actually saying like the words. So they're hanging out. Oh my God, they're doing so many telescope times.
At 4 a.m, it's so cute.
Yeah.
Well, because we haven't gotten to the big one. Right?
Yeah.
The big
please.
No,
yeah, I was just going to do that. Go there.
Well, hang on.
Oh, go ahead.
Before before we get to the big telescope, we find out some more about like her and her dad and why she found out she loves the stars and things like that. But more specifically, she has a moment where she gets a glimpse into his past, which is important. And she says it was disconcerting to think of him not as a man who marshaled wealth, beauty, and cleverness to obtain everything his heart desired, but as a possibly lonely little boy who could no more control the events of his own life than he could change the tilt of the Earth's axis. She starts to get a glimpse into his childhood, like what made him who he is. And it's not enough. It's not enough to forgive him or change anything, but it's a little bit more awareness as to who he is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because she doesn't know everything about him. Like, I mean, the more she gets to know him, the more she realizes how little, like, she actually understands about his situation growing up and who he decided to make himself into.
Yeah. She thinks that his privilege in wealth and finances also applied to like the emotional landscape of the family. And she's realizing
she's clearly never read a romance novel before.
Exactly. No, but like one of the things they decide is that maybe she wants to learn more maths. And Sabrina, I feel like you had a big ol'
we will talk about this later in the book. I had the biggest fucking boner the
last
boner. Quarter of this book. I was so fucking horny for math. It's not even funny. I went and did equations. Because I was so enamored by all of the hyperboles and parabolas. I was like, I got to go do some math, y'all. Ooh! And I did. I took a break from reading to go do math.
So he says, like, she'll be able to understand, like, how to follow the path of stars or whatever if she knows more math. And so maybe he can teach her math. And she's like, I love that idea. Great idea. And so she like walks into the schoolroom that he grew up in, and it's like dark and terrible. And she sees that like his world was incredibly small, even though he had the means to like travel all over the place and have this rich life. His world was really, really small. And the more she finds out about his mom and dad, she's like, oh shit. It seems like it was small and like depressing and sad.
Right. Yeah.
So now he has figured out that he is maybe in love with her. But wow, he's not going to talk about it, and he's not going to tell her, and he's not even going to think about it. But he says, hey, I was wondering if you wanted to see the biggest private telescope in all of Britain. And she's like, why? And he's like, well, because I want to show you my telescope. You know, it's like over here. And she's asking all these questions like, do I have to travel for it?
Also,
like,
oh my God.
Will it take a long time?
There's so much innuendo of telescope as dick.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and the way he kind of sets this whole thing up is like, I mean, he tells her it's because he was waiting for a clear night. But there's also this line where he's like, he needed a safety net. If she were already in love with him, then perhaps it wouldn't be so terrible if he were to fall in love with her. And looking back, it was shocking that he hadn't been particularly concerned about the state of her heart. Whether she loved him had been immaterial. It had been enough for him to hold her mesmerized and unable to escape. Now he was the one mesmerized and unable to escape.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, maybe you should have thought about that before you got married. But
who knows?
I just wanted to share real quick. Y'all are talking about the private telescope that we're about to see in this book. And we were talking about how math horny I was earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the London Observatory where Greenwich time is a thing while I was in London. I took pictures and I did get to see a telescope very much like what they were describing. And I was like, the entire time I was reading this, I was like thrust back into the horniness, especially because like I also work in like a field, not to get too specific, where like time zones and geography and all of those things matter a whole lot. And like the entire last third of this book, it's almost like Sherry Thomas looked into my head,
wrote it for you,
and said, what would Sabrina find most nerdily erotic?
Uh-huh.
And then she just pegged.
She did all of
it. Peg. peg, just one after another, like
I know.
darts. I was so science horny for this whole fucking, like, I was enjoying the book up until this point, and then it was so swoony and so sciencey and so nerdy, and it gave me a lot of feelings.
I know. Well, and in this moment, he's like, the telescope is a metaphor for my heart. He's like, I've made this offer to her, and there's like this big pause before she says anything. And he's like, I've never been more vulnerable in my life than like asking her if she wants to see my telescope, and maybe she'll say no. What would happen? But she says yes.
True. And then it's also a metaphor for his penis.
Heart, penis. What's the difference really with him?
Whoa! How dare you besmirch his organs like that? His heart and his penis are their own organs, and they have their own
different
feelings.
stuff.
Because Lord knows he's been using the hell out of his penis publicly, and all of his heart parts are kept real deep inside.
It's true.
Louisa, the queen, literally says, I'll never be impressed with your puny instrument again now that I've seen this monster. They said, good luck getting this monster inside her, and she gasps, and he finishes house. He laughed, what did you think I was going to say? I had to have the roof specially reinforced, and we assembled this monster piece by piece right here. It isn't going anywhere. She whacked him on the arm.
And
So
then to
everyone's
follow,
aware. It's
Wait. And then they do a bunch of snuggling
yeah.
That
while
is very
looking
cute.
through the telescope. And like, it's adorable. And it's very poignant and emotionally wonderful. And then, Sabrina, what happens?
And then he says, I'm sure you won't need me again after tonight now that you've met your one true love, but I hope you'll remember me fondly. And she grabs his shoulder and looks at him soulfully.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then goes and looks in the telescope.
But then at the end of the scene, she says, I'm really excited about going from one monster to another. As they like head to the bedroom.
And then he says, is that all you need to be happy? A pair of monster instruments? And she says, I also have your pretty face and your vast fortune. So yes, my happiness is complete. But he's such a sad boy about it because he's like, tell me you love me.
Yeah. What do you like about my personality though? Is there anything about my brain maybe that you like?
And my heart.
And then it concludes that he could no longer deny it. He was hopelessly in love with her. Like
Hopelessly in love. So now shit goes sideways because they see the sister of one of the dudes, the allegedly incestuous sister, but she's like on the arm of another dude.
Yeah, like she's in town.
And Louisa's like putting something together.
She just thinks it's odd, and well, she asked him a question about his earlier lie, basically about this woman and her brother, and he doubles down on it basically. It's like, well, I was at this hunting party, and I saw him doing up the placket of his trousers, and she came out and kissed him on the lip. It's like he really embroidered. Like, this would have been a great time, maybe. I mean, she still might have been pretty pissed about it, but it would have been a lot better if he had just told her the truth now.
Yeah.
And he does not. Instead, tries to get her out of town so that she won't run into Miss Edwards. I think it's her name.
Miss Edwards.
Won't run into her again. Yeah.
And then we're going to go ahead and zippy zap to her meeting Miss Edwards.
Whoopsie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because
learning
the
the
one didn't have a
truth.
good time.
Yeah.
She learns the truth and that she's not incestuous, and then she and Felix have a fucking gnarly argument about it.
And that her brother was heartbroken when they announced her engagement to Felix. And she was like, I'm really sorry I was a bitch face to you, but I really thought you were just after my brother's money. And Louisa, I love her. She's like, you're not wrong. I think he's a lovely person, but you're not completely wrong. Oh my God. And Felix walks in, sees them sitting together, and his face immediately falls. He knows.
Oh, yeah.
And based on his face falling, she knows. She's like, oh, this was all intentional. This was part of the game.
Yeah. So she goes and she reads him the riot act. She's like, did you lie? And he says, well, yes. She says, why? And he says, well, I couldn't find any dirt on this guy, so I had to make dirt up. And she says, I could be with a scoundrel, but I cannot stand being with a cheater. And she says, like, he's completely dishonorable.
Yeah, he says, there was no chance of you being my mistress as long as Lord Fritz was a candidate. And he, in his own head, he says he had never thought it would sound good, this explanation, but still, its egregiousness stunned him. He had never been uglier.
Yeah, and yet he's thinking to himself, like, but, you came out way better in the end.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and then he says, one of the reasons I married you is because I didn't want your life to be ruined based on my lie. And she says, so if I had become your mistress and made myself ineligible for any respectable marriage, would you not think my life was ruined based on your lie? And he's just like, oh. And that's when she realizes, you've just never thought about me. All you've ever thought about is you and your image and your reputation and your happiness.
She specifically tells him, I dare say romantic love isn't the same thing as sisterly love, but all love should meet a minimum standard. A lover should take my wishes into consideration and have a care for my well-being. When have you ever thought about me except so that you may better gratify yourself, either to make you feel more powerful or to make you feel less out of control?
Oh, this gave me chills.
Yeah.
And she fucking deuces. Catch my farts, bitch. And she leaves London.
Yeah, she goes back to the house.
She goes back to Huntington.
Yeah, she slaps him.
He realizes he has a fucking come to Jesus moment, and he realizes, I need to be better for her, and how can I do that? What are my options? And he realizes he needs to do things for her that do not benefit himself.
Right.
Also, we did miss that when she avoids him, he does send her tulips, which the love language is, I'm hopelessly in love with you.
Yeah, golden tulips.
He does a floriography on her.
And she does fully look at those tulips, know exactly what they mean, and then take them elsewhere.
I love the Victorian language of flowers. Yeah, like, I eat that up.
Yeah, you're talking Melody's love language right now.
Yes, I was so horny for these tulips and this gesture and all of the floriography. I was just like, this is how we need to communicate everything.
Taylor, you somehow picked a single book that hit a lot of horny points that are fairly niche.
Very niche.
For both me and Melody.
I love that for all of us.
I know.
This is one of my favorites.
Because I did read this book, and the minute I saw the floriography stuff, I didn't use that word in my head until just now.
Right.
But when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, Melody is probably creaming herself right now.
I mean, because listener, please remember the new logo is all floriography.
All floriography.
All of the flowers mean something about the podcast.
That was all Melody.
Oh, I love that.
She did the research. Mm-hmm.
It was hours and hours of work. You should see my psychopathic whiteboard on Canva, where I had to try and figure out like how I could boil it down to like the essence of the podcast. And those were the flowers we would use.
You should have heard the phone conversations where I was like, I like that flower and that meaning. And she's like, but what about this nuance meaning for this other flower? And I was like, I just really love all of these things. Everything that you have on this whiteboard, I love. I feel like I've trapped myself.
But do you like it more or less than this sentiment?
Exactly the same. It's all beautiful.
But yeah, so they get back, and then it's time for the Christmas house party. And she realizes just how much he has paid attention to her and her family and all of the people that she loves. Because, like, this is such a small scene, but it's not a small scene.
It's not
because
small.
She is talking to the housekeeper, and she's getting the housekeeper ready with information about her family. And the housekeeper just fucking lays out a bunch of stuff that she already knows about her family. And she's like, how do you know all of that? And she's like, oh, the Lord already brought this information to me. Like, Lord Renworth already told me all of this.
And he had spent like 4 days with them.
Yeah.
And yet picked up all of this information to, I don't know. It's not small. So she's like, that's wild.
She, after this, finds herself in the schoolroom petting a vase of tulips. And I was like, you're going to fall so hard. I can't wait for you to skin your knees.
I know, because he's renovated the schoolroom to be like light and airy and welcoming. And now every single day, even though it probably costs $300 a bouquet, at Christmas time in England,
Yes.
he has these golden tulips, a new bouquet every single day put in the schoolroom to be like, I'm hopelessly in love
and
with
not
you.
only that, but sending her notes saying like, whenever you're ready, I'm your tutor and I've got it. And then they do have a moment where he's like, if it makes you more comfortable, we can hire a tutor. We can find somebody to come out here. And she tells him, I'm not in the habit of spending money for a tutor when I have a husband who could instruct me free of charge.
And he's like so happy, but also very tentative about it because he's like, I don't want your discomfort with me keeping you from things that you love. So we will get you a tutor. We can do that. I don't have to be a part of it. I just want you to do things that make you happy. And she's like, no, my husband will do just fine. Thank you so much. And then he goes to her and he says, hey, I was wondering if you can tell the housekeeper to put Lady Tremaine's room up in the attic away from everybody because I did promise her all the handsome gentlemen and, you know, she doesn't want to knock boots in between like the Pennyworths and the Frizzles, you know, like we don't
Frizzles.
Shush.
That's the name you're going with. The Frizzles?
Yeah, the Frizzles who are second cousins to the Featheringtons, okay? So then she says, she looks at him and she says, do you consider yourself one of the handsome gentlemen on offer? And he says, no, absolutely not. I only want you. And then she's like, I'll tell the housekeeper. Okay. All right. Okay. Meeting adjourned. Goodbye.
So then during the Christmas party, they find each other in the schoolroom together. And we find out that he's been practicing, like he's practicing his lessons for her.
He's timing them out.
Yeah, he's lesson planning hard.
Which is the sexiest thing I've ever heard in my life.
He's got lecture notes on lecture notes.
And it's beautiful.
Well, and it leads into a conversation, right?
Yeah.
You're going to say about his mother. And I think it just comes up that his mother and father didn't have a great relationship. He says something about his mother punishing his father. And she asked
herself.
What did she... Right. And Felix, basically. Louisa asked, what did she do? Ignore him. And he says, has anyone ever told you you're an immensely good person, my love, that your idea of punishment amounts to no more than a pointed spurning? My father's punishment was the belief that my mother instilled in him that I was most likely not his flesh and blood, an idea made plausible by the fact that I resembled him not at all. And Louisa, so she could not accept cruelty of such magnitude of deploying one's own child as an instrument of vengeance.
Yeah.
Well, and we have seen this because when she at some point was in the gallery hall and looking at his mother, there was a comment. She made a comment about how little he looks like his father and how much he looks like his mother. So like it's a completely reasonable thing that his father could believe. Yeah. That's not his child.
One of the things
and Felix realizes later, like as an adult, that if that had actually been true, she would never have done that. Like his mother would never have been as pointed about it.
But the damage is done.
Right.
Yeah, the only reason she could is because she was completely and utterly only with him. She was real pissed about it. Well, and the important phrasing in that conversation, I think, is him saying, my mother didn't realize that punishing my father for the entirety of her life also punished herself.
And
Oof.
then there's a swoony part because he says, the ideal gentleman might have always had what he wanted, but I have not. I know perfectly well what it is like to wish for affection and receive none in return. I won't deny that if I were to have your heart, it would make me the happiest man in the world. But in the meanwhile, what I really want is for you to profit from our association.
Oh.
And she says, by any definition, I have already profited handsomely from our association. And he says, that's for your family. I want you to have everything you have always wanted in life, everything you have ever dreamed about. And she says, and you will be content to just give and take nothing in return. And he says, I won't be just content. I will consider it a privilege.
He's really making up for his early abilities.
This is such a good grovel. This is, you know what? This is the first book. I've added a grovel tag because I love a good grovel. This book is the first one in that tag. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a months long.
And then can I just take over for a second for math horniness?
Yes,
please. So,
you direct this.
Oh boy. So they have their first lesson on the Cartesian coordinate system, which it's totally beautiful. It's your normal graphing system, and she's starting from scratch. Sexual. They can't even get into trigonometry yet, and she's so horny for it. And when she gets back to her room after that first lesson, she looks at the telescope, and there's just him. There's a dress dummy on the top of the folly in his teaching jacket with a tulip boutonniere. Yeah,
little elbow patches.
And it's beautiful. And then there's all sorts of comments about how horny he is while teaching her. He starts with a nothing, and then he gets a half chub, and then he's fully erect by the end of the lesson. And he just can't. And he has to take himself in hand multiple times because of how intently she's watching him.
To relieve himself with his hand after every lesson.
And then she's so into it that she asks for 2 lessons a day, which I've never felt more seen. And so he's having to come and take himself into hand multiple times a day.
Well, and she's thinking like if they had hired anybody else, she would be fucked. Because the way that his body is moving with that chalk and the graceful move of his wrists and stuff. Ooh, she's into it. The way that the skin glistens with the fire.
Get ready. Wait, I have it. The purposeful fluid movements of his wrist as his chalk dashed across the blackboard held her wrapped. His perfect, his perfect freehand circles and parabolas and croissants of pleasure through her. The talk of quadratic equations, matrices. I fucking love a linear algebra. I love a matrix.
Oh, see, I love a man who can draw perfect freehand circles.
Oh my God. And inverse functions were so much erotic poetry that set her belly aflutter. And if he even so much as hinted at trigonometry, well, she burned. I was like, I've never felt more seen about somebody being horny for math.
I love it. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And then during a lesson, he catches her not paying attention.
Well, because she's looking at that body yaddy yaddy,
right?
You know?
And that parabolati yaddy yaddy.
Yeah, that too.
Just this freehand circle.
Oh my God, the sexiest goddamn parabola. And then guess what? He enters that ellipses. He wraps her on the knuckles, and he says, "You go."
No, he smacks the desk. He doesn't hit her hand.
No, I wasn't even knuckle whacking.
I wasn't.
in my head canon, he gives her a little bit of a little whack, and like shocks her out of it. And then he's like, "Go stand at the chalkboard." That's what. He says, "What should I do to punish you?" And she says, "What did they punish you as a child?" And he says, "They would make me go look at the chalkboard and stand there for an hour." And
she's
so
pretty mad she's not getting spanked.
Oh boy. And then she does. She goes to that chalkboard, and she's right up there looking at those sexy Cartesian coordinates.
And then he comes up behind her, and he's like, "What was distracting you, my love?" And she takes the chalk, this sexy minx, and on the board she writes, "You." And then her other hand comes up behind her to grab the nape of his neck. And then suddenly, it's like the wedding night again. He's a ravenous animal. Her skirt comes up. He gets out of his pants somehow. And then there's just this upward thrust of passion and ardor and stuff.
It was the most incredible, most delicious sensation, like being pounded by a runaway train.
Yes.
Okay, so I gotta ask. So y'all ever just read a book and then a scene lives rent free in your head for the rest of your life? And like, if I can only recreate this is one of those for me. Like up against a math chalkboard, chalk all over my front.
Right, all over.
Like, what a specific fantasy.
Clouds and chalk dust.
I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is living rent free in my head for the rest of my life. And also, hilariously, why is it historicals? Like, I don't know what it is about historical. Because another scene that lives rent free in my head is Cross crawling across the ground and Another Good Earl Deserves a Lover, or whatever the fuck the name of that book is. And like, what is it about a fucking historical when they're doing their thing, and I'm like, I'm going to go to my grave. Like, my last thought before I die might be this chalkboard scene. I don't plan to have children, but if I have grandchildren or like grandnieces and nephews, they're gonna be like, Meemaw, how are you? And I'll be like, the chalkboard, and then just die. And then, wait, hang on. She says, so after this delightful scene, I fucking loved this scene so much.
The crazy eyes on Sabrina right now are giving me life.
I loved it so much.
I know.
He says, I would clear the chalk from your blouse too, but that would require me to do unspeakable violence to your chest. She looked down and slapped her hand a few times. Oh, slapping that mic. Bang. She looked down and slapped her hand a few times across her own sternum. A cloud of chalk dust rose between them. Surely the most romantic sight in the world. Far better than morning mist on the sign. Ma'am, you are correct.
Sabrina is overcome.
I will never recover.
Y'all need to take it from here. The book ended here for me. Like, that's not actually true. Because then he says, have you forgiven me? And she says, yes. And then she says, or at least enough to once again use you for your young, firm body and your pretty face. And I was like, I'd be using you for your math expertise. They're going to be in calculus before the end of the year. They're going to get into quadratic equations.
Well, I mean, she's also using him for that.
Oh my God. I've never been hornier for math.
This is close. Right?
Oh boy.
So they start being together again.
Yes. Because I think after that night, I think they decide to start having sex more frequently so they're not interrupting their lessons as much. But that night, I think he tells her to stay with her, and she says, all right. She'd always meant to anyways. And he says, I love you. He told her just before he fell asleep, and she remained awake for at least another hour thinking of him, thinking of their future.
And she can't say it, though, because she still doesn't feel safe.
Right.
And she hasn't gotten the sign that, like, he's not doing nice things for her in order to benefit him. But all of that changes one morning. They're sitting at the breakfast table.
By the way, listener, all of this happens in the last, 15 pages of the book.
Oh, yeah.
Math horny and what's about to happen. We're 345 pages into this book. And then it's just like, boom, let's fucking fix this shit.
Yeah.
Right.
And so he gets a calling card from somebody who's at the door. And this man, this older gentleman, says that he was a friend of his mother's and he's hoping that he'll let him lay a funeral wreath on her gravestone in honor of their friendship. And so they both look at each other and they're like, are you thinking what I'm thinking? And they're like, yeah, probably.
Well, friendship.
Yeah, friendship.
Right.
This is probably the guy that the mom was in love with and couldn't marry. So they go out and they meet him, and he's like the sweetest man in the whole wide world. And he never got married. He always just worshipped this woman for his whole life.
Like, he went to India and became a soldier or whatever. And he talked about how she was just the sweetest angel, that he ever knew. And you're like, okay, I guess, you knew a different side of my mother than I did.
Right. Yeah, you knew her in a different...
It's almost like you knew her before her whole life got turned upside down and ripped
Sure.
inside out and turned... It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. Before she was forced to marry somebody after being starved for months on bread and water.
Truly.
In order to marry a rich man.
Yeah. But it's interesting because she is watching him see his mother almost as if she existed in a parallel universe.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to connect with this man on that level because he doesn't want to let him walk away with like an even more broken heart. So they take him, and then after they lay the wreath, he asks him if he wants to see all of her favorite places on the property. And he's like, or what? Yes, I would love that, if you wouldn't mind. So he takes him all over, and he's talking to him about her daily life, her hobbies, her,
the embroidered this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, showing him like the giant conservatory and all of the flowers and plants that she like cultivated for the property. And she is watching him talk about this woman that only existed in like brief snapshots in his childhood, and the rest of the time was either cruel or completely indifferent to him. And yet he's just talking about all of her wonderful qualities. And so at the end of this, they they invite him to lunch or whatever, and he's like, no, it's okay. And he's like kind of sniffling. And this is after he's like looked at all of her portraits, and he's just like, she was the most beautiful, most wonderful, angelic, sweetest person ever. And I'm going to go now. Thank you so much. And when he leaves, Felix says, well, I need some whiskey. And he goes inside, and then she realizes like,
this is
there was no reason for him to do any of that.
This is the sign that she's been looking for.
Yeah, it was so hard for him. It had nothing to do with her. It was just him being kind to this stranger who, like, through no fault of his own, kind of ruined his life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
traumatized him from childhood. Yeah.
Yeah. She runs in there, and she runs into his office, and she throws herself at him, and she says, I love you. And then he says,
I love you.
He says, say it again. And then she's just like mumbling it against his lips because they're kissing. They won't stop kissing. I love you. I love you. I love you.
I just gotta let you know, I fucking hate that melody. This is an audio medium that you've already exploited the shit out of.
What are you
putting
talking
on
about?
Instagram? But I hated that hand movement. I fucking love you. They were kissing. I love you. I love you. I love you. I'm into tentacles, and that's too much for me, Mel. Just
it's like that guy from
there.
Futurama.
Don't like that.
That guy. Yeah.
I have read books where Cthulhu tentacle fucks with his face tentacles.
Yeah.
And that's fine. This Interesting. Too much.
Not
into it. I don't like
too much.
I don't like
right.
it. It was too much. But
they liked it.
I look forward to seeing you do it many, many more times. Now that you've done it once, it means I'm gonna see it again.
Oh no.
And then they live happily ever after, and it's the best.
Yeah.
What's the epilogue, I wonder?
The epilogue, you didn't read it?
I did. I just have no memory right now.
It was very short.
They finally make it out to the Roman folly instead of the Greek folly.
That's right.
And she's like, you realize the village can see up here. Like, I can see into people's windows. And he says, oh, all right. Why not? We came all the way here. Let's give the villagers an eyeful. And then he says, I know I love you for a reason. I will love you even more when they come for you with pitchforks. And then she says, and I could never be this happy with anyone else.
Oh, and she discovered a new comet. And like all the business, like they're just,
oh my God. And she's learning calculus.
Oh. Yeah. She probably found that comet with calculus, Sabrina. You know?
Probably.
I'm so fucking horny for astronomy right now.
All right. What are your lady loves?
I know mine off the top of my head.
Yeah, what is it?
If you have the funds to pay somebody else to do something you really don't like doing, pay them to do it. It is, frankly, even if it is, so, because I've done the cost analysis, okay? I've done the cost analysis. My time is worth less than what I am paying this person to spend that same time doing the thing, but I hate mowing a lawn. I don't want to fucking do it. And guess what? I officially have a new lawn person. And
nice.
I'm so excited because it means
Sabrina, I wish I could be your lawn person. I love mowing a lawn.
Wow.
I love it.
Are you coming to the commune? Like, bring your fam. I hate mowing a lawn. And I think it's because I grew up never having to mow a lawn. I lived in apartments
I didn't either.
And things like and now I'd rather be spending that several hours just cross stitch or
spend
knit
on
or
you.
Play in the garden that I bought seeds for the other day. And like I could just do other things with that time that make me happier.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so my lady love is, if you have the funds, free up time for yourself where you can.
Nice. All right, Taylor, do you have one?
Yes, mine is much simpler, but I live in the desert, and I know everyone else is probably just coming out of winter with extremely dry skin like I am. And this stuff costs like $10 on Amazon. It's not expensive, but it's Weleda, the skin food. And it's just moisturizing lotion. It smells like plants. Like, it's just the best plant. But that is the smell you get when you use it. And I use it on everything. My hands and my feet and like my kids. I just like slather them in it. You can even put it on your face too. It's like
incredible.
It's very moisturizing and it feels thick, but it doesn't clog your pores. So yes, Weleda.
What was it called again?
Weleda, Weleda skin food.
Awesome.
Yes.
Ooh.
Okay.
All right. I've been looking for something new, so that's exciting. I will definitely do that. My lady love is laugh directly in the face of misogynists. Wow.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
So we had some work done at our house, and the guy that I really, really like couldn't do it on like a time frame that made sense. And so we went elsewhere, and boy, was it a terrible decision. But, we made it through. We're through it. But the guy who like ran the thing was the worst, most obvious misogynist I've ever encountered in my life. He would only talk to my husband, even when I was talking directly to him. And it finally all came to a head because they kept on messing up the job. And we kept on being like, you need to fix it then. Like, this is not, you messed it up, right? Like, you can see it with your eyeballs. With my husband, he would be like, oh, yeah, we'll definitely blah, blah, blah. But if I pointed out an issue, he would do things like try and measure it at an angle so that it seemed longer than it actually was if you were measuring it perpendicular, And I was just like, I finally got to the point where I was like, Johnny, you can't just say things out loud and assume, and like, I'll take them as facts when they're not facts. Like, you can't, it's just not going to work. You've got to stop this. But then one time, we were talking about scheduling, like, one of the things to fix. And I'm standing on the lawn with him, talking to him. And then he sort of, like, disappears behind the truck. And I see him on the phone. And so I was like, okay, he's probably talking to somebody on another job. Like, he'll be right back to finish the conversation we were in the middle of. That's fine. I'm going to let it go. Then he comes back around. And he's like, oh, well, Michael said la, 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 la. And I said, wait, my husband, Michael? And he was like, yeah. And I said, wait, I'm so sorry. You were just around, you called Michael when you were over there? And he was like, yeah, I did. And I was like, Johnny, why didn't you just talk to, or like we could have talked together? And he looked me dead in my beautiful face. And he said, I don't need permission to call your husband.
Oh my God.
And I just cackled like it was an involuntary, like, just cackle in his face, being like, are you real? I cannot believe that just happened. So anyway, he didn't get a good review online.
No. I'm glad about that. I have known way too many contractors like that. That is awful. I am so sorry.
I have apparently had incredible experiences before this because our usual guys are amazing. You know?
I am so...
I don't need your permission to call your husband.
I am. You remember how I was like vibrating with math horniness? Like
yeah. Are you vibrating with anger?
I'm now vibrating with sheer rage.
I know. It was one of the most amazing.
All of that beautiful horny for linear algebra gone.
I'm sorry. Go read that scene again and forget about that asshole.
I won't.
Live in that
I'm not going to do that. But also, like,
I know. It was one of the most surreal, like, cinematic experiences. Like, I felt like I was watching myself have the interaction.
To be clear,
it's okay because I really made his life hell
brain.
after that. What?
Like, I can witness the entire scene in my head, like him coming up and saying that, and you being like.
I could not believe it. And then I made his life hell. For the rest of the job, I was the point of contact, and there was nothing he could do about it. Anyway, okay. Right. Wow. So laugh in the face of misogynists.
Also, lotion up with Weleda and hire somebody else to do the shit.
Yeah.
Which, except not that guy, apparently.
Yeah, not that guy. Hire the good people.
So,
stuff.
Keep being a badass and love yourself as much as you love math. That's just where I'm ending it.
As much as you love.
Sabrina loves that stuff.
That dusty cloud of sexiness.
Oh boy, I'm happy again. It's fine. It's fine. It's like that conversation never happened. Oh boy.
Oh my God. Taylor, thank you so
for
much.
coming on.
Yeah.
I love this book so much. I'm so glad we can talk about it.
Yeah, me too.
So good.
All
right. Bye.
Bye.
Heaving Bosoms is produced by us, Melody Carlisle and Sabrina Bradley. Editing is done by Melody Carlisle.
Our theme music is by the incredible singer-songwriter Brittany Fonts, and our art is by ultra-talented author Kate Pryor. If you like our show, remember to follow us on your favorite podcast app, rate us 5 stars, leave a nice review, and of course, tell all your friends about us, even if they don't read romance.
If you want to get in touch, you can email us at heavingbosomspodcast@gmail.com. If you want more of us, visit patreon.com/heavingbosomspodcast. You can also find us on Instagram @heavingbosoms, on TikTok @heaving_bosoms, and in our Facebook group, the Heaving Bosoms Geriatric Friendship Cult.
Head over to our website to sign up for our newsletter, get our Reading Embrace printable, and check out my audiobooks at heavingbosoms.com. All right, we'll be back next week with more swoons and snark. See you then.